So without further ado, let's start. I'm going to share my screen. Please feel free to stop me, interrupt me, ask questions, challenge me. It's a discussion, not a pure lecture. I'm using 3 monitors, so I'm going to be looking sideways every now and then. Just some helping tutoring materials on my right and left, and your video on my left. So getting started on BigQuery, well, the first thing you want to do is enter this URL, console.cloud.google. BigQuery is a managed service at GCP inside Google Cloud. I opened a dedicated account, dedicated project. There's many projects owned by me, but a dedicated project called SQL Demystified. And you can have here on the left a quick overview of all the services that are provided. We are going to talk about BigQuery today. So if you click on BigQuery, you'll get a browser editor that you can run your queries here. For example, I already inserted some tables just for the sake of the demo. You can ignore the rest of the projects. There are just projects that are owned by me. For example, I have here a table that this is the schema where you have columns inside, the date, session ID, a user ID, a game ID, score. This essentially tells you nothing without seeing the data. But before we view the data, let's have a look at the details. You have a details tab. And inside you have the created date and the last modified. This is essentially created from a view, but from another table I created for this demo, this one. But we can view the data by querying the data in a new tab. So it initially automates an initial query for you. Hello, Brian. Thank you for joining us. Should you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask. We're talking about BigQuery today. So my first query to run would be this one. I would simply press run, and I get the first 1,000 rows in this database, in this table. What you see here is the same columns that we saw in the schema, which is date, session ID, user ID, game ID, and score. And you can review the data and start questioning everything you like. I'm gonna do a quick overview about the BigQuery system, so it will be easy. I'm not gonna focus today on SQL. If you would like to refresh your SQL, we have created a previous event a couple of weeks ago about introduction to SQL. You can review that. It's very nice. There will be a follow-up session as well. So let's continue on the platform itself. Once you ran your query, you can do several things. One, you can save your query. You can give it a name and a visibility owned by you, project level or public. You can share that. Never tried that before, but it's an option. You can schedule it to run every hour or something like that. And you have a lot of services or configuration. For example, you can press format query, which will align the query in a very nice and neat way, organized fashion matter. You can do query settings where you can, for example, set a destination table for query results. You can then choose the table right preferences, if it's right, if empty, override the table is simply append. You can press allow large results if your query result is too big. And you can cache results. This is also something you should know. If you're a new user, it's not a problem, but legacy users of BigQuery have a different SQL syntax called legacy syntax. But the default now is the new standard dialect. So it's not a problem unless you have old queries. Naturally, everything is encrypted by Google. You can set the location to say where you wish to save your data, which is in the EU or US. So this is the basic menu and query setup. Notice you can do more tabs and switch between them, which is very convenient. You can do full screen. You have shortcuts, which I hardly use, but you should know they exist. And you have a search here. If you have many projects, for example, lots of projects over here, you can search through them. Weird. You can give the name of the table, for example, Demystified. Okay. You have many options here on the left, which we are not going to cover today, as there are totally different features. And what I wish to share today is many cool stuff regarding BigQuery. For example, you should know that the division inside a project is via datasets. Each dataset is like a software database. You can create a dataset. You need to call it sample dataset. You need to set up your location, for example, US. You can do table expiration, meaning the table expires after, say, 3 days, which is very nice. Once you've created the data set, you can create a table, you can share it, you can copy, you can delete it. Let's create a table, an empty table for now. Let's not load anything. Table, sample, table. You have many options to load data into the BigQuery, but there are 2 ways to preserve the data. The most dominant one is native table. Always select that until you're quite proficient and expert and you feel you're ready for the more advanced features. You can create the schema via text, or you can simply add date, your columns, and select the data types. You provide the description, my date, and add another one, my name, naturally with no spaces. Max length, let's say 100, my first and last name. We can talk about partitioning. We can do that in a second. For now, let's do partition by date.
13.
And let's ignore that for now. Custom advanced options for now, just create a table. Okay, so we have a sample data set and sample table. You can see the date in my name. And you can hit the details and notice you have something new here, the partition, which is partitioned by date, and preview. Currently it's empty. If you had more data, you would have been able to scroll pages. Okay, any questions before I proceed? No. Who's whistling? I'm gonna mute those who are unmuted. You're more than welcome to unmute to talk, but whistling kind of interrupts the lecture. So notice these 3 points. You can do action. You can open, query, delete. So I'm gonna delete this table because it was simply for this demo purposes. Oopsie. Oopsie daisy. Okay, and you can delete the data set as well. Okay, and you can remove the search and see everything you have in my data set. So I've created the data we can play with. Again, first 1,000 rows. So what you see here is data. You can scroll right on the next 50 page. Mind you, when you use the preview, which is this function, you're not paying for anything. Only when you query the data. So we'll talk about the billing model in a second, but I want you to be able to understand that you can do several things with the query results. For example, you can save them. You can save it to a Google Sheets. You can save it to a Google Drive, local JSON, another BigQuery table because it's only the results you're interested in, or you can copy it to clipboard. For example, let's put it in Google Sheets just to see how simple it is. You see the process being happening as we speak, and then voila, you have it in Google Drive. Since you were authenticated by a Gmail user, everything is quite simple. Any questions, guys? Okay. Okay, so what we have here is the data we outputted. But we can do several things. We can press here the explore with data. And you can explore it with Sheets or with Data Studio. Data Studio is a BI tool, a business intelligence tool, free if you're using Google. Notice you get a free sample of how the data is organized. And the whole idea of this tool is to generate some visualization to understand how things are working. For example, let's add a chart. Let's do this one. And let's do a date and ask the average score. Okay, this is a bit too noisy. Let's remove this. And let's add date control range. And let's do last 28 days. Okay, sorry. Nasty. Okay, let's remove this. 2016, sorry. So let's do a date range. And let's pick (2015) January to 2015, 2016 January. Nope. Wait. One second. I forgot to select the days, and this is the average score per that day. So this data studio tool combined with BigQuery allows you as an analyst to get really clear and simple insights. You can play around with this. You can change the type of visualizations you make, do many interesting stuff around it. Okay, let's talk about billing model. Okay, so you should know that when every time you're running the query, you see then this query will process amount of bytes. In this case, it's 0 because it's too little. But the pricing model is per the amount of data scanned. For example, if you have 1 terabyte worth of information, you'll pay $5 for each time this query runs. Sounds like a lot of money. However, 1 terabyte of data is the equivalent of an entire library full of books. That's a lot of data. So essentially, BigQuery allows you to start from any scale, even from the lowest amount of rows, and to scale all the way to a petabyte, which is the equivalent of 1,000 libraries. And you can do that as easily as I just did with these tables and these queries. Any questions before we continue? Anything? Okay, so essentially, this concludes my session, unless there's questions about something specific you wish to talk, learn. For example, I would like you to know that you can easily start yourself by getting a free $300 credit by going to consolecloud.google.com. Just put in your credit card and you'll get the $300. Don't forget to close your account when you're done playing around. You can always track your billing. Here and see the expected cost per project. Okay, it's very nice, very easy. You can do drill down and breakdowns. You have current month, you have last month, You can group it by a project. You can group it by an organization, any type of project. For example, our project, if I select it, you'll see the cost is quite zero, and the cost is only the BigQuery I want to know. So I can quite easily track the cost and understand that for training purposes, the cost is zero. So this should be quite helpful for you to get started, and you're more than welcome to ask me question even after the lecture. Just simply contact me. I'll be happy to help. Allow me share with you another source where I put some relevant materials. This community is called Big Data Demystified. We are public on meetup.com, and we are active in many countries. And I want to show you that this group is English speaking, and it's approaching 16 countries, 70 groups, and over 1,200 users around US and EU. And everything we did in the past and in the present are going to be uploaded into this website. Everything is categorized. So for example, for today's session, it's going to be here on GCP BigQuery. Where you have some explanations, some blogs, some cost reduction techniques if you're an advanced user, some basic how-tos, some basic error messages, some meetups about projects I did with BigQuery. You're more than welcome to see the video. Some are in English, some are in Hebrew. There are usually clear tags on the name of the video. Another cool thing you should know that there's a cheat sheet I've created for some basic SQL queries to help you get started. And there's a quick start blog that I've created. And the more detailed one is this one. Oops, sorry. This one contains about very thorough presentation, about 105 slides, give or take. It's usually too complicated and too much to cover in one session, but there are a lot of relevant links and information in this meetup. You can go over it by yourself. It's really, really nice. Explains everything quite in details, and it was quite helpful for me when I got started. It gives you tips about what to do, what to avoid, but you need to be very patient when you read it because it's highly technical. Before we conclude, any questions, guys? Girls, don't be shy, please. Even if your English is not perfect, you're more than welcome. No? Okay.
Do you know? Hello?
Please.
Do you know how to import more than one tables with some data pump, or how to import many tables at once on big data?
Yes, but you need to be very specific about what is the source, so I'll be able to answer. Do you have a concrete example?
No, I'm just asking, what's the possibilities? What possibilities we have? So
Yes. So allow me to share screen again and share with you the possibilities. Is that okay? So I'll try to answer your question by sharing with you the create table functionality. For example, can you see my screen?
of course.
Thank you. So I'm gonna create a new table again, but this time instead of an empty table, I'll show you all the options. You can load data directly from Google Cloud Storage, which is essentially a managed storage layer. Are you familiar with any cloud? Like
Yes, of
Azure,
course. No problem. Yes.
which one are you familiar with?
Especially AWS.
So Google Cloud Storage is the equivalent of Amazon S3 and Azure Blob Storage. It's the same, essentially same service. Furthermore, you can upload, which is not relevant to what you described, and Drive is also not relevant. So on BigQuery natively, you can use either of these three to put the data over here on the storage and then directly load it to BigQuery. Another option would be to have the data on cloud storage, and instead of selecting a native table, you can create an external table. Would you like me to go over it?
You answered my question first. Thank you. File format for all tables can be JSON.
Yes,
or...
I just opened the file format in front of you. You have CSV, you have JSON, you have Avro, Parquet, Org, and this one I never use, so you have many options to load. Naturally, if you select something, it could be compressed. So it's a non-issue. The second most common one is Parquet and JSON. CSV, JSON, Parquet, but you have to notice that this is a new line delimited JSON format. Are you familiar with the difference? Hi, Oslan.
I don't know. Maybe not.
So feel free to ask, my friend. This is why we are here, to learn together.
It's new line after each record.
Let's see if I get a quick, no, this is not the blog I wanted. I think this is the one. And it explains it. Up. Nope. Nope. There's a good example blog about this.
It looks like that the records are separated by new line.
Yes, I just don't wanna, I want to be very 100% accurate and not to mislead you. Here. You see the difference? As you said, separated by a new line. This is one line, this is one line. And what you have here is inside an array and separated by commas.
Thank you very much for your explanation. Another question, if I can, is can you explain really shortly BigQuery? BigQuery, yes. What's the main purpose for BigQuery? Is there any cube, analytic cube analysis, or some kind of multi-dimensional queries? Am I right?
So allow me to share a little bit about architecture. 1 second. One second, I'm looking for a slide. Well, BigQuery is essentially a data lake. Do you know the difference between a data lake and a data warehouse?
Maybe not really from the book, but my own definition is that the data lake saving all the data without any schema, and the data warehouse has more structure. Am I right?
You're close to it. There are many ways to look at it, but allow me to share my own simple way of looking at things. The idea is as follows. You have a generic data lake, which has many stages in your architecture, your data architecture. For example, ingestion is the data, the raw data you get. Transformation is basic data cleansing. 1 second. Basic data cleansing, and modeling is your business logic. Presentation is caching for the BI. But essentially, this architecture can be implemented using a quite long list of technologies, but the basic is as follows. You have the compute on the right, and you have the storage on the left. If the compute and the storage are separated, it's a data lake. The whole idea of a data lake is that you put the data in one place and you allow many technologies access it. Why should you do that? The idea behind it is that you keep one source of truth in your storage, and you allow different technologies to access it differently. For example, BigQuery. For example, Athena in Amazon or Redshift. It doesn't really matter. Does this make sense?
Yes, it makes sense. But back to explanation, I just read about it, that data lake store all the data without to know the future values, future analytic values. It's like a save everything. And the data warehouse has some concept about what data will be evaluated to make some aggregate values. That was my proposal. But you said something else. It's about the storage as a single point of truth for all other computing systems as a data lake.
I simplified the definition to make it simple for everybody. You have in a computer two main systems. One is the storage and one is the CPU, the compute. If you separate the two and you keep the data only once for all the type of computes you have in your applications, it's a data lake. Yes, this could be with or without schema, and once you load it to BigQuery, you essentially enforce schema. So to answer a question, BigQuery is a data warehouse, but you can use a data lake methodology by using external tables. by separating the storage and the compute. So you'll have your parquets and JSONs over here, and essentially have a pointer from BigQuery to the storage.
You are right, maybe, I don't know, but thank you for your explanation.
You're most welcome. It's not a matter of right and wrong. It's a matter of separate approaches. For the end of the day, it doesn't matter if it's a data warehouse or data lake. At the end of the day, you need to load data into your database, regardless of the technology, and then you need to present it in your visualization tool. Either it's Looker or Tableau or Sisense or Power BI or Click, it doesn't matter. What matters is how you model your data on BigQuery. Allow me to share with you an example. Forget how the data is coming in this case, it doesn't really matter. But for the sake of this course, I've created the three first layers of the architecture, the ingestion, which is simply some table with dates. Okay, you have an ID, you have a full date, a year, a week of the year, a year day, a fiscal year, the name of the day, and so on and so forth. Is it a weekday or a weekend? Then you have a transformation, which is comprised out of the ingestion. And I did some basic business logic by creating a random number and assigning it to the table and renaming full day to date. Moreover, I created the fact table on the modeling layer, which is same table, only with some more additional compute calculations. The whole idea was to demonstrate SQL capabilities in the previous session of SQL. So I took a hack of a query that generates random dates. Okay, I create dates from this date to this date. And then on top of that, I did some calculation to generate a pseudo user ID and a pseudo game ID. And the trick in any database, in the end of the day, is how you create a fact table in the modeling layer that will enable you to ask any question. For example, show me the average score and group it by date. So I select only, I want to see only per date, the average score. One second, let me beautify it a little bit. Average score. Okay, so essentially I can ask any question I want based on this basic modeling. Does it make sense, my friend?
Yes, of course, of course. How many dimensions are you?
In this example, I just used one, but
just date.
Obviously, yes, obviously you can have more dimensions as your schema assumes there's a user dimension and a game dimension. So you'll be able to enrich your data. But for the purpose of learning SQL, it was a good exercise. There's a next session on joins. I'm going to talk about join syntax, and I'm going to have dimension tables. I'm going to join them together, so it'll be a more elaborate example.
Does the application come with sample data that we can play around with?
So this application, BigQuery, doesn't come with sample data, but there are sample data sets. You can look them up, BigQuery sample data sets. They are public, you can use them for free. For example, you have not this one. This one, Wikipedia articles. Very nice. GitHub timeline. So you have many public data sets you can extract data and really do cool and interesting stuff. You have even Nest, I believe, as a public data set. It's weather forecasting. This over here. And it gives you a quick explanation about the data set, and it specifically says you can use the $300 credit you have, but you need to be very clear about what you do, and you need to filter out specific dates, and not run on the entire data set, because this will cost you a lot of money. So you have to be very, very careful around this.
Right, thank you.
Allow me to share another blog about querying relatively small data sets. Are you familiar with Google Analytics? Anyways, Google Analytics is a relatively known marketing use case. And there's several ways to parse the data. For example, query new tab.
What's the difference between Google Analytics and Google Cloud Console?
Google Analytics is another solution. It's a marketing tool.
Like a dashboard, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Google Analytics. I can take you to even our Google Analytics, so you can see.
Right. Yes.
Well, let's show you even the statistics of our website, just to get a sense. Okay, this is real time. In the last minute, we have one user. We can do many types of overviews, reports, demographic data, for example.
Oh, yes, it's based on the traffic that comes to your website. Is that right?
Yeah, yes,
yeah.
exactly. On this one, on the Big Data Demystified
Gotcha,
website.
yes.
So this data is stored on Google, and you can extract it via API. You can put it, put it in your BigQuery and query it. Does it make sense for you guys?
Yes, thank you. For me, it does. Thank you.
Okay, Google Analytics is more for ads and advertisement. and the data which extracted from the marketing, and BigQuery is more general purpose, I think.
BigQuery is a database, and Google Analytics is a marketing dashboard, where you can ask many type of questions. For example, what type of mobile devices are used?
Okay, but Google Analytics, is it possible to import data in Google Analytics?
Yes.
I'm not sure, because it takes just the data from your website, not from general experiment with the data.
Yes, you're correct. If you
So-
don't have a Google Analytics account, you won't be able to explore my data, your data. But there are public Google Analytics data sets.
Okay, so it means you can't import the data into Google Analytics. It's one purpose, I will say, special purpose analytics. Okay,
Yes.
database. But BigQuery is also, there is possible to import the data. That's the difference.
Listen, here's the query. I'm gonna run it from my BigQuery. It compiles. In a second, it will give me a green light. And listen, you see, already it will scan 125 megabytes. I'm gonna pay for this query simply because you ask. I want to show you I can do this. Are you with me?
Yes.
Should I pay the price? You're gonna buy me beer if this doesn't work, yes?
I don't need to execute if it takes too much.
No, it's 1 cent, my friend.
That's
On the
£300.
house. Yes.
Okay, your data, your.
This is not my data. This is a public data set.
This is the public data. Okay.
Notice I Googled it. Where it is.
But you can't do that with Google Analytics, vice versa. That's what I think he's trying to.
This is a Google Analytics data set, a public one. This is mine. It's not a public, it's a private
Okay,
one.
you export it. Okay.
Like this, you see, you have a sample data set. You can read about it. You can analyze it. Have I lost you, or does this make sense?
No, it makes sense. Just go on.
So I just did that and to show you the power you have with BigQuery, and where you can start immediately playing with this, learn some SQL, generate some insights from data. You can upload your own data. You can work on sample data sets. You have $300 to experiment. So this is interesting stuff. Okay.
Yes. Okay.
Any more questions before we wrap up? Okay, so I want to go over the next sessions with you guys on just to see. That naturally shows me all the different countries. So I'll give you a sneak peek to the main dashboards of Meetup. I'll take you to network events. And we have next week the part 2 of the SQL Demystified, which is I'm going to talk about joins. Very interesting stuff for beginners. And there are 2 more sessions about complex and advanced open source solutions. So you can tell your friends to come. This is going to be highly interesting. So next week, stay tuned for SQL Demystified Part 2. And naturally on the website, there's Part 1. If you want to go over it, allow me to share the blog with the video and slides. I don't think there were slides, but yes, sharing the screen. Okay, SQL Demystified, you can simply search this one here. SQL Demystified, you'll get this. It's under BI and Analytics. SQL Demystified, and then we have the video and the slides. Okay, so if you want to show up next week, have a look at this one. This would be a good introduction for you guys. Last questions, guys. Going once, going twice.
And then I have one question. It's about the special syntax for the simple SQL commands are really basic for me. I'm asking, what do you recommend to check or to see if I want to use some multi-dimensional queries, some kind of OLAP cube queries with big data? BigQuery.
BigQuery.
What's the name?
BigQuery. Simply use BigQuery and BI tool.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. As simple as that.
Do you have any links or something to? I'm especially interesting to multi-dimensional queries or something. Okay.
No, this is not. This is the link so I showed you. It's a very specific question, and it requires a really specific answer, but allow me to give you a general one. The most popular way to model data and to visualize it is using BigQuery and some sort of BI engine like Tableau, Looker, or Data Studio. This should allow you to do everything you need. The more advanced the BI tool, the more options you have. You don't need to work hard like you used to do in the past to create an OLAP cube and stuff like that, which requires a lot of maintenance. You simply get the data to BigQuery, generate your data model, and then run.
But there are some multi-dimensional commands or some kind of special syntax in SQL. Am I right?
Yes, but the whole idea is to generate a simple data model and use the power of the SQL engine to get answers to what you need quickly. So imagine you get all your raw data into one place and you ask everything you want on top of it. So there's no data cube necessity anymore. You have everything you need in one place, unified, centralized, you just query with multi-dimensions.
But did you use any multi-dimensional query now for this project today?
No, not in this project. I just showed the basics. Yes, naturally. In the next session, next week, I'm going to join several tables just to demonstrate their capability.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Okay. So guys, it was a genuine pleasure to meet you all. Please join the next session and stay in touch. You're more than welcome to add me in LinkedIn. You're more than welcome to send me messages and ask questions. If I'm free and I'm available, I'll be happy to assist. I would love to see you on my network on LinkedIn, attaching the link here on the chat as well. And until the next time, have a good day.